Hey guys, good morning. I hope you're okay. I hope that you have been safe. I hope you enjoyed the practice the other day about the short story that I left you. I know that a lot of people didn't do it. I hope that eventually go and do it. Um, if the lack of homeworks continues, I will have to find another way to assess you, but it won't be for the same points. Because I don't think that it's fair that I give you the same points as all the other people that works very hard to understand and very hard to do all the work that we've been doing together. Just clarifying that. So you tell your parents that you're not going to get the 90 if you're not really working around it. But remember, this is not about the 100. You're not a number. You're beyond a number. You're more than a number. So chill down and let's start. So last week I left you only one video of the book, that it's chapter 11. Today we will start reading chapter 12. I'll read half of it and then you'll read the rest alone. I hope that you finish them, because otherwise, when I give you a couple questions later, you will struggle to to do it. Okay. Okay. So I was counting the pages. I have to read with you 5 pages according to my book. Okay. So I'm gonna read some of them and then you're gonna finish reading them. Eventually I will give you a video where I dictate a couple questions that you have to copy in your notebook, and so you can collect them. You are going to have a test this week, and it's going to be based on the questions that I gave you first from the biomes story. So those questions that you copied in your notebook that you were supposed to send me pictures in the platform, that's going to be what your homework is going to be based on. Your test is going to be based on. So we are going to do video Monday, and then I will give you your questions for Tuesday, and then we will have the test, a quiz, a practice, whatever you're going to call it, a practice. We're going to have it on Wednesday. Okay? So let's do this first. Okay, so chapter 12, the mirror of Erised. As you can remember in the last chapter, because you were supposed to finish, Harry was playing Quidditch, and someone threw a spell on his broom, and he was shaking around the field, and he almost fell, and he caught the snitch. He almost didn't catch it, but he caught it with his mouth. The snitch was flying around and had catch it in his mouth, and people was making fun of him because of that. So that was the end of chapter 11. If you didn't read it, you're supposed to. Okay. So chapter 12, the mirror of Erised. Christmas was coming. One morning in mid-December, Hogwarts woke to find itself covered in several feet of snow. The lake froze solid, and the Weasley twins were punished for bewitching several snowballs so that they followed Quirrell around, bouncing off the back of his turban. The few owls that managed to battle their way through the stormy sky to deliver mail had to be nursed back to health by Hagrid before they could fly off again. No one could wait for the holidays to start. While the Gryffindor common room and the Grey Hall had roaring fires, the drafty corridors had become icy and bitter wind rattled the windows in the classrooms. Worst of all were Professor Snape's classes down in the dungeons. So if you remember, they're taking potions with Professor Snape, but they are being taken in the dungeons downstairs, in the very bottom of the building, where their breath rose in a mist. They could see their breath because it was too cold before them, and they kept as close as possible to the hot cauldrons. Because they were making potions in the cauldrons in big pans, they kept their hands warm in the cauldron. I do feel sorry, said Draco Malfoy in one potions class, for all those people who have to stay at Hogwarts for Christmas because they're not wanted at home. He was looking over at Harry as he spoke. Crabbe and Goyle chuckled. Harry, who was measuring out powdered spine of lionfish, ignored them. Malfoy had been even more unpleasant than usual since the Quidditch match. Disgusted that the Slytherins had lost, he had tried everyone laughing at how wide-mouthed Tree Frog would be replacing Harry as Seeker next. Then he realized that nobody found this funny, because they were all so impressed as the way Harry had managed to stay on his bucking broomstick. So Malfoy, jealous and angry, had gone back to taunting Harry about having no proper family. So, as you remember in chapter 11, when he was flying off, he had to stand on his broomstick, and then because he couldn't catch it, he was trying to stay balanced, and if he tried to grab the snitch with his hand, he would lose balance and fall. So what he did is that he grabbed it with his mouth, and then he finally was able to fall because he was finally on balance. So Malfoy was trying to make fun of him. As you remember, Harry was invited by Professor McGonagall to be the Seeker of Gryffindor because of his excellent skills catching a remembrall, a ball of glass ball that belonged to Neville in the previous chapters. And Malfoy is angry because you have to be a certain age to be able to be in the Quidditch team, but Harry made it before that. Because of his greater skills. So because he cannot bother Harry because of catching the snitch with his mouth, he's bothering him because he has to stay in Hogwarts in Christmas. Now, let me tell you, if I could stay in a place so beautiful as Hogwarts with this, playing with the snow, with magic, eating delicious food made for everybody in the Great Hall, having the opportunity to read in front of a chimney, and being able to go to the library and read all those magic books, who's going home? I would stay in school. But Harry is not a bad person. I mean, he realizes that he doesn't have a family to go. Obviously, he's not going to the Weasleys, because they're very bad people. Weasley. Dursleys. Sorry, I confused the families. The Dursleys. Okay. So let's continue because this video will be too long. Okay. It was true that Harry wasn't going to private drive for Christmas. Professor McGonagall had come around the week before, making a list of students who would be staying for the holidays, and Harry had signed up at once. He didn't feel sorry for himself at all. This would be probably the best Christmas he'd ever had. Ron and his brothers were staying too, because Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were going to Romania to visit Charlie. Charlie is one of Ron's brothers. When they left the dungeon at the end of potions, they found a large fir tree blocking the corridor ahead. Two enormous feet sticking out of the bottom, and a loud puffing sound told them that Hagrid was behind it. "Hi, Hagrid! Want any help?" Ron asked, sticking his head through the branches. "Nah, I'm all right. Thanks, Ron." "Would you mind moving out of the way?" came Malfoy's cold drawl from behind them. "Are you trying to earn some extra money, Weasley? Hoping to give gamekeeper yourself when you leave Hogwarts, I suppose. That hut of Hagrid's must seem like a palace compared to what your family used to." Ron dived at Malfoy just as Snape came upstairs. "Weasley!" So this is kind of confusing because of the way this writer is explaining everything. So Malfoy came up when Ron was talking to Hagrid, and he was implying that Ron would work with Hagrid taking care of the school as like a gardener. Because his family is poor and he would live in a nice house, which is Hagrid's house, because he is poor. Now, the place where Ron's family lives at, it's a magical place for me. It's a place where all the things move. You'll see it later in the next movies if you haven't. Their rooms are magical. They have like a ghost in one of the rooms, It's a beautiful place. It has a humongous field where you can go. I remember that in one of the books I read that they were playing with gnomes, they were flying them away. It's a beautiful place. But Malfoy is trying to make Ron feel bad because he's poor. He shouldn't feel bad because he's poor. I mean, there's not wrong with being poor, but because Malfoy is rich, he thinks that there's a problem with that. So Ron pushed Malfoy against the wall, and then the Professor Snape came. Weasley! Ron let go of the front of Malfoy's robes. He was provoked, Professor Snape, said Hagrid, sticking his huge hairy face out from behind the tree. Malfoy was insulting his family. Be that as it may, fighting is against Hogwarts rules, Hagrid, said Snape silkily. 5 points from Gryffindor, Weasley, and be grateful it isn't more. Move along, all of you. Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle pushed roughly past the tree, scattering needles everywhere and smirking. I'll get him, said Ron, grinding his teeth on Malfoy's back. One of these days, I'll get him. I hate them both, said Harry. Malfoy and Snape. Come on, cheer up. It's nearly Christmas, said Hagrid. Tell you what, come on with me and see Grey Hall looks a treat. So the three of them follow Hagrid as he streaked off to the Great Hall, where Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick were busy with the Christmas decorations. They were decorating the Great Hall is where everybody eats. Ah, Hagrid, the last tree. Put it on the far corner, would you? The hall looked spectacular. Festoons of holly and mistletoe hung all around the walls, and no less than 12 towering Christmas trees stood around the room, some sparkling with tiny icicles, some glittering with hundreds of candles. How many days you left until your holidays? Hagrid asked. Just one, said Hermione. And that reminds me, Harry, Ron, we've got half an hour before lunch. We should be in the library. Oh, yeah, you're right, said Ron, tearing his eyes away from Professor Flitwick, who had golden bubbles blossoming out of his wand and was trailing them on the branches of a new tree. That should be amazingly beautiful. The library, said Hagrid, following them out of the hall. Just before the holidays. Bit keen, aren't they? Oh, we're not working, Harry told him brightly. Ever since you mentioned Nicholas Flamel, we've been trying to find out who he is. Nicholas Flamel is mentioned at the end of chapter 11. If you don't know who he is, go back. You what? Hagrid looked shocked. Listen here, I told you, drop it. It's nothing. It's nothing to you what that dog's garden. We just want to know who Nicholas Flamel is. That's all. If you remember, at the end of chapter 11, Hagrid told them what's the name of the dog. Said Hermione. Unless you like to tell us and save us the trouble, Harry added. We must have been through hundreds of books already, and we can find him anywhere. Just give us a hint. I know I've read his name somewhere. I'm saying nothing, said Hagrid flatly. Just have to find out for ourselves, then, said Ron. And they let Hagrid looking disgruntled and hurried off to the library. They had indeed been searching for books for Flannel's name ever since. Hagrid had let it slip, because how else were they going to find out what Snape was trying to steal? The trouble was, it was very hard to know where to begin, not knowing what Flannel might have done to get himself into a book. He wasn't in the great wizards of the 20th century or notable magical names of our time. He was missing too from important modern magical discoveries and a study of recent developments in wizardry. And then, of course, there was the sheer size of the library. Tens of thousands of books, thousands of shelves, hundreds of narrow rows. So they were trying to find who Nicholas Flamel was, but if they didn't have kind of a clue of what they were looking, if he was a sorcerer, if he was a botanical researcher, an engineer, some magical kind of thing, they wouldn't know how to start. Hermione took out a list of subjects and titles, and she had decided to search while Ron strode down a row of books and started pulling them off the shelves at random. Random like this. No, maybe this one. No, maybe this one. So he was randomly trying to find which book would tell you something about Nicholas Flamel. But it's a book, you have to read the whole thing. Harry wandered over to the restricted section. He had been wondering for a while if flannel wasn't somewhere in there. Unfortunately, you need a specially signed note from one of the teachers to look in any of the restricted books, and he knew he'd never got one. These were the books containing powerful dark magic, never taught at Hogwarts, and only read by older students studying advanced defense against the dark arts. "What are you looking for, boy?" "Nothing," said Harry. Madam Pince, the librarian, brandished a feather duster at him. "You better get out then. Go on out!" Wishing he'd been a bit quicker at thinking up some story, Harry left the library. He, Ron, and Hermione had already agreed they better not ask Madam Pince where they could find flannel. They were sure she'd be able to tell them, but they couldn't risk Snape hearing what they were up to. Harry waited outside the corridor to see if the other two had found anything, but he wasn't very hopeful. They had been looking for 2 weeks after all, but as they only had moments between lessons, it wasn't surprising they found nothing. What they really needed was a long search, without Madam Pince breathing down their necks. 5 minutes later, Ron and Hermione joined him. Shaking their heads, they went off for lunch. "You will keep looking while I'm away, won't you?" said Hermione. "And send me an owl if you find anything." "And you could ask your parents if they know who Flannel is," said Ron. "It'd be safe for you to ask them." "Yeah, very safe, as both of them are dentists," said Hermione. So we can see that Hermione's family is not a magical family. Even if she's super smart, she comes from a Muggle family, a non-magical family. Once the holiday had started, Ron and Harry were having too good a time to think much of a flannel. They had the dormitory to themselves, and the common room was far emptier than usual, so they were able to get the good armchairs by the fire. They sat by the hour eating anything they could spear on a toasting fork: bread, English muffins, marshmallows, and plotting ways of getting Malfoy expelled, which were fun to talk even if they wouldn't work. "See, I told you, having fun in front of the chimney." Ron also started teaching Harry wizard chess. That is what exactly like Muggle chess, except that the figures were alive, which made it a lot like directing troops in a battle. Ron's set was very old and battered, like everything else he owned. It had once belonged to someone else in his family, in this case his grandfather. However, old chessmen weren't a drawback at all. Ron knew them so well he never had trouble getting them to do what he wanted. So chess is that board game where you have like a checkerboard table thing, and then you have different pieces, and you do checkmate and stuff. It's difficult. I have never been able to play. It seems very interesting and for smart people, because I can't. Harry played with chessmen Seamus Finnegan had lent him, and they didn't trust him at all. He wasn't a very good player yet, and they kept shouting different bits of advice at him, which was confusing. So, because the pieces are magical, they speak to the people. So they would keep telling Harry, "Don't send me there. Can you see his knight? Send him. We can't afford to lose him." On Christmas Eve, Harry went to bed looking forward to the next day for the food and the fun, Christmas, but not expecting any presents at all. So as you remember, he's been living with the Dursleys, and as you remember, they're not very nice people. They're not really nice to Harry, and I really doubt that they have ever given any present to Harry. So he wasn't expecting any presents. He has lived a poor life. He doesn't really care about those things. When he woke up early in the morning, however, the first thing he saw was a small pile of packages at the foot of his bed. "Merry Christmas," said Ron sleepily as Harry scrambled out of bed and pulled on his bathrobe. "You too," said Harry. "Would you look at this? I've got some presents." "What did you expect? Turnips?" Because for Ron, even if his family is poor, it's very normal to get presents. Because he doesn't think that, something that you should notice about Ron is that he doesn't think that nobody is poorer than him, that nobody has had a more miserable life than him. And Harry had. He was mistreated, Ron was loved. He never got presents. Ron got presents. Not the presents that he wanted, but he got some. He didn't have brothers or sisters, and Ron has a bunch of brothers and sisters. He didn't ever needed any money because he doesn't access to anything. And Ron didn't have any money because he didn't need access to anything because he had his family that supported him, which used things. Yeah, but he did. Just like me, when I was little, my mother used to take me to buy used clothing at the thrift store, at La Ropa Usada. And I love them, and I still do it because it's amazing. In the thrift shop, my friend Karen doesn't like them, but they're the best. And the ones in the States, even if you don't have a lot of them, they have like a small of them. They're really expensive. You don't find like 5 lempiras clothes in the secondhand store in the States, but they have jewelry and books, a lot of books like this. See, used and stuff. Like it's amazing. Okay, so I will let you read the rest of the chapter by yourself. You're gonna have to read what present Harry gets. Because he gets an amazing present. And with that, he goes away and he finds something very magical. Yeah, he finds something very magical, and he has an encounter with a good friend of him, or a future good friend of him, that explains him what the thing that he finds with the present that he gets from someone that he loves does. So this will be your video for Monday and Tuesday because it has been long. So on Wednesday, I will give you a test of the questions that you have been doing from the volumes story. So that's on Wednesday. So listen. Tuesday, you're gonna listen to this video and to this. And Tuesday, you can continue listening to this and finish chapter 12. I'll give you that. Chapter 12, The Mirror of Erised. You have to finish it until you finish it. Because later we're going to have an assessment based on this. And then on Wednesday, you will have an assessment, a practice based on the questions that we have made from the biomes. And yes, it costs points, okay? Probably like 10. So study your questions for Wednesday, guys, okay? I'm gonna post this video 2 times because on Tuesday and Monday you will do the same, chapter 12, okay? So don't freak out. Please don't WhatsApp me. Please don't ask me. The explanation is in here. You can listen into it, okay? So I'll see you on probably Friday. See you guys.